In this episode of the InWork Podcast, I have the absolute pleasure of talking to Cindy Gersh. Cindy has a remarkable story to tell about being a high-powered corporate executive who was jet-setting and living the high life before she experienced a very brutal disease that came out of nowhere, that's absolutely rare, and it debilitated her for some time. Meanwhile, she comes back from short-term leave from that corporate job because she was honestly couldn't get out of bed from this disease, and then they fired her. So what that led to was Cindy starting her own business where she runs an agency and does speaking engagements where she talks to people about the incredible thing that she's accomplished overcoming a chronic disease. So I'm super excited for you to listen to this consulting conversation that we had and hear some of the stories that Cindy has to tell. By the way, Cindy offered a special thing at the end, but we had already stopped recording. So if you want to go check that out, it's 20% off any of her services. And she also has some free resources. If you go to the show notes, you'll get all the details there. Just go to davevalentine.co for more details. All right, I'm going to stop. Let's get into the conversation. Cindy, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. It's so good to chat with somebody that I instantly vibe with, and I certainly have with you. So thanks for coming on.
Definitely, Dave. Super excited to be here. Thank you.
So tell me, what's the problem that you're experiencing right now in either one of your businesses?
So it's funny because the problem is trying to merge kind of the two businesses, which is kind of interesting, right? So I have been in marketing for my entire life, right? Pretty much my entire career. I was a reporter first, and then I switched over to marketing, which a lot of people do. And for the past 4 years, I've been out of corporate and own my own marketing business, which I love, New Marketing Group. And we've won awards and I've done fantastic things with it. And I love it because it's allowing me to really grow, right? Like before, when I was in corporate world, I was really working with developers, construction firms. I've worked with so many different types of professional football players, nonprofits, and sort of everything in between. So I love it. And I don't want to lose the marketing component of it. However, somehow, and I don't even remember how it started. I started telling sort of my personal story, was getting out there more and more. And people started finding out about my personal story, and were coming to me and were like, you have this fantastic story that needs to be told because you can help people with this story and it needs to get out there. And so I did my listen, I've spoken all around the country on marketing, communications, and crisis communications. It's very different though when you're telling your personal story versus getting out there and speaking about professional things, right? So I went out and did my very first professional speaking engagement on my own personal story at a conference, and I loved it. And afterwards, everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is great!" And now I'm being featured in a book, and I've done so many. I'm averaging probably 5 podcasts a week. People are finding out about me. And I love it because my story, I feel A, it's very therapeutic to me to get out and actually tell this story. And B, I know that it's helping other people. I know that it is. And so what I would love to do now is to figure out a way to sort of merge sort of the two businesses together. And I have a coach and I have some ideas on how to do that, right? But I'd love to sort of talk through that.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about what you're doing with whenever I checked everything out, I saw that you're doing strategic marketing, brand development, content creation, PR, event planning. It's a litany of things in the marketing space that your agency is doing. And then when it comes to your story, what are you saying? What's the thing that's getting? Because I'm assuming that there are people that are coming to you for the marketing piece, and then there are people that are coming to you for the speaking piece. And there's got to be some overlap and synergy there. So tell me a little bit about the story, and then tell me what that may put some things together for the agency.
So my agency has been doing all the things, but what I've realized lately with the last few clients that I've had is that I'm actually really a strategic marketing company, which means mainly brand. I focus really on, I've done a lot with branding. So clients come to me with an issue. So for instance, my football player, he needed a kidney. Like that's an issue. He was dying. And he said, find me a kidney, find out a way. And so I developed a strategy to find him a kidney, and I did in 4 months. And so like they come to me with an issue. Most of the issues revolve around not having a brand, right? They don't know their brand value prop. If they don't, they think branding is like their logo and their color template, and that's it. And I go back and I'm like, what is your brand value prop? They're like, it's like deer in headlights. They're like, I don't even know what that means, right?
Right.
So that is where I've really been focusing, because I think once you get through their branding, things come naturally after that. That's what I think, at least that's been happening. That's at least what my clients are showing me improving. And so, yeah, and then my story has nothing to do with marketing, except for the fact that I've overcome huge obstacles, both physically, because I have this super rare disease right now that I'm fighting through, that only 2% of the world has, which also deals with you emotionally, sort of all those things. But then it crosses over, like, people are like, you hit rock bottom and you somehow dug your way out and are now this successful entrepreneur with this business. How the hell do you do it? So that's kind of like where I think it sort of crosses over. And that's really what my coach, I have this fantastic coach, has like told me that he thinks that's really where it could cross over, like working maybe with people who have chronic diseases, rare diseases, who want to start a small business or start their own business, like helping them with that. And I could see that as sort of, that makes sense to me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a unique group of people that have overcome or are in the throes of an unexpected health crisis. And it, as you've experienced, it shakes you to your core as a person when that transpires. There's also something that happens whenever your marketing is not working, whenever your brand is misaligned. It's like having your body misaligned. And
yeah,
so
very true. I love that. Yeah.
And so there is something to that, right? Like, and I really wonder if there's something here where you start to tie in. Listen, it happens often that our bodies experience dis-ease, and it happens often that our brand or our company or business experiences dis-ease as well. And so I'm going to teach you how to overcome that, not just through strategies and tactics, but also through my own journey and experience, because there's something that's the human spirit loves when humans overcome, and you've done it.
For sure.
It's great success. Like, that's tremendous. So does that kind of like feel good to you?
Yeah, I love it, because I do think that there is a group, like, we're called spoonies. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but spoonies are people who have, right? I didn't know it either until I was diagnosed with this disease. It's people who have chronic illnesses. It's like you start the day off with a number of spoons, right? And everything that you do, you get rid of the spoons because you're exhausted by the end of the day. So taking a shower, sometimes you have lost two spoons. If you like have to go to the mall or shopping, that's 2 spoons. And so we call each other, like, we're spoonies, because you only have a certain number of, I don't even know where that terminology came from. It sort of does make sense.
Yeah.
And being involved sort of as I have been in this, and it's only been 4 years in this chronic illness, rare disease world, one of the challenges that people like myself have is when you have a disease like mine, going back into the corporate world, right? Because it's not conducive, right? Yeah. Like, so if you're working, like I was talking to my coach about it, he's like, I have diabetes. I could not be an Amazon, like if I couldn't be an Amazon like truck driver, because I wouldn't be able to stop and take my medicine at the appropriate times. And like, for me, there's days where I'm so physically exhausted, I can't get out of bed. So I couldn't just be like, okay, I'm going to take today because I'm exhausted. And that is very, very you hear that a lot in sort of the chronic illness world, which is why so many people who have diseases are like, okay, I have this other talent that I love doing. I want to start my own business because it's a win-win, but I don't even know where the hell to begin.
Yeah. And it's, I think that this is the thing. Like, this feels like the thing to me.
Yeah.
For you, Cindy, it's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. You're teaching people that have chronic disease to overcome and to build a life that's sustainable for them. And
Yeah.
so many, this is true for every entrepreneur, right? It doesn't matter what your background is or what you're up to.
Right.
You have no idea what you don't know. And the list,
I say that's one of my phrases. I don't know what I don't know.
and the list
I
of
say that all the
things that
time.
you don't know is so exceptionally long, it feels insurmountable. And
Very
so if you started to say to people who are chronically diseased, hey, I'm not just going to tell you my inspirational story. I'm also going to show you how to build brands that sell, so that you don't just have this business that actually is pulling from your spoons. I love
Right.
that, by the way.
Love it, right?
But it's actually adding to the freedom of your life. And so the ways that we do that, and I know that you have courses now and you have different bite-sized things that people can get in on. And so then it's like, hey, and once you get to a certain level, you graduate. I love graduation language.
I love
It's
that. That's great. Yeah.
You graduate on to working with my marketing agency, and we'll do it for you. But in order to get you there, we need to take some of these steps. So let's take those steps together. And then it becomes a very natural pipeline so that you can start to go, okay, I've got a speaking engagement. And I know that I'm telling my story at the speaking engagement. And if it's possible, I'm going to give people a freebie, or have you written a book yet?
So I am in right. So this has all happened so very quickly, right? So I'm in a book that's with a bunch of other women with their sort of like overcoming things, but now everybody's like, no, you need your own book. So that's sort of coming I'm working, like I said, I have a great coach and he's helping me through like all of this.
I love this. So you could put together something that's easy to give or to discount to the people at any given event, right? Hey, if you want to learn more, if you want to kind of get the traction that I've gotten with my brand, because you have inherent authority anytime that you're on a stage. Like instantly, people are like, Cindy knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. They're like, oh my God, she is an expert automatically. Yeah.
And you're doing 5 podcasts a week. One of the things that I've done when I'm a guest on podcasts, I always have a freebie to give at the end of the podcast. I'm like, hey,
I just started doing that. My coach told me that. I just started. So I have a freebie, by the way.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah. And so then it builds your newsletter, your email lists, right? That you can remarket to on a consistent basis, try and get them into step 1. And you may even have the ability to do brand strategy cohorts. So instead of someone paying you like 10 grand to do a brand strategy ongoing bit with them, you could maybe work with 10 people, give them a general idea of what it looks like to go through the process, charge them $2,500. So you're doing the same amount of work, but you're making 2.5 times what you would with a singular client. And then you'd still have some of these other things that are available, but now they're tied to you, and I think that that's the beautiful thing, Cindy, is you're so much of the brand to get them in, and then it's the agency's turn to then take it from there. And I think that that's really where, like, as you start to do this, the agency will start to grow. You'll see pipeline ahead of time. And there will also be people that come to you and they're like, hey, I just need the agency right now. Or I just need the personal, and so you'll have this beautiful flow. And that seems to be the thing that just makes a ton of sense to me, is using that sort of language of, and I think there's also you could carry that like graduation, schooling over, like all that stuff could be a big portion of how you talk about what you're up to. Because
I love that. Yeah, I love it. And I think one of the things too with people who have, is one of the reasons that I hit such rock bottom, right, when that I talk about my story, is within a very short period of time, I had a lot of bad things happen. And one of them was I lost my corporate job, like very suddenly. right after I'd come off of short-term disability from I went on short-term disability for my disease. And very shortly after that, I lost my corporate job that I'd been with for 7 years. And I have never not worked, right? I've worked since I was like 10 years old, delivering Avon books back in the day. And so like, I'm just conditioned to work, right? Like through both my kids, like I've never, like, this is just who I am. And so to go from having this super lucrative corporate job, super busy, traveling all the time, to having nothing, that really fed into my depression because I wasn't like using my brain. I wasn't doing anything. It was why I could drink at home all the time because I had no responsibilities, right? Like I was just like, okay, I can have another mimosa.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's also an issue that a lot of people with diseases have is like, you feel like if you can't, it's harder to find a job. And when you like, if you can't find that job, you're like, I'm not using my brain. I'm not to my full potential. So I'm wallowing in my illness even more. I'm feeling, so it's sort of like a win-win. Really, it is. It really helps them. Yeah. It helps people in so many ways. It's unbelievable.
Well, and what you're going through speaks to what this podcast is. We were saying before we hit record, it's about the things that we do in work to be successful and the inner work that we have to do to be successful. And most of the time, on business content and podcasts and stuff, we always talk about like, well, how'd you do your lead gen and how are you doing your orgs and like how are you doing these things? And we miss hey, there are days and there are seasons in your life where you're just leveled.
Oh yeah.
And it's not because you did anything to deserve it. It's just life. Life just happened. And so what do you do then? And it happens to so I don't know anybody that it hasn't happened to yet. Actually, it's just different. It's just different for every person. And so I think that that's really the interesting thing that you could play with here is as well as like another thing is like, look, you're going to have this moment where you just need to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Let me help you figure out how to just take the next step. And that could be another freebie. It could be its own like really inexpensive e-course where you're like, hey, for $19 or for $10 or whatever, I'm going to show you how to just get out of bed, how to just get your day going, how to find confidence in yourself again. And it could be something that's really, really powerful where they start to see you, Cindy, as, I don't want to say a guru because that's too far, but as someone that they really know, love, and trust is like, Cindy helped me get out of a dark place personally.
Yeah.
You can help me get out of a dark place personally. I bet you can help my business get out of a dark place when I get that really rolling. And you just become that trusted advisor that all the time, when I need something, when I'm down, when I can't figure out how to do this thing, marketing, whatever, I'm always going to go to Cindy first because she's got my trust.
And that's the thing, like, first of all, how awesome, like, I feel like that would be so fantastic because I'm helping so many people. Like, that's when it's not even about money, right? Where you're like really making a difference. Like, who cares about the money side of it, right? Like, that is where you're like, this is what life is really all about, really like sort of helping people. And at the end of the day, you're absolutely right, because there are days where, it's, everybody says to me like, oh, you look so put together. Like if I saw, I would never know you were sick. I would never know that, like, you're so positive and everything. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't show you those. I'm not going to be on social media. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should.
Yeah,
maybe I should show people. So that's what I've started to do. Like I take people with me, like when I have my FMD, like my disease is called fibromuscular dysplasia. We call it FMD for short. So I will take them with me. Like, this is my FMD day at the hospital, ready, go. Here's what I'm dealing with. Or I'll take a picture of me, like not being able to get in bed. Like, this is, me having a horrible day, not like tears coming, looking rough, because I'm like, this is the reality of it. Like, why everything we see on social media is like, I feel like it's so filtered all the time. Like, this is the reality of having a chronic disease. And if someone can relate to me better because they're like, she's not always all put together. Like, I think that helps them relate better to that.
Absolutely. We have lacked the transparency. It's one of the 6 core values that we have for each of our 7 companies. Transparency with people that aren't our customers. And we should just be telling them, like, look, there are days that I don't want to move. There, like, I had about 6 weeks ago, all my businesses are doing 6 of the 7 are doing 7 figures plus.
Love it.
But I had a moment 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly, where I just got so much I just got so much negative news in like a 96-hour period that I found myself curled up in the fetal position on the floor right here, just because it was like, oh my gosh, what else is going to go wrong
What
today?
else can go wrong?
You know? And I made sure to put that out on social because it's so powerful. And so many people are like, what? Wait, what? You? I'm like, yes, because I'm a person.
That's right. That's right. And they don't, and people don't see you as a person, like, especially when to your like followers on social media who you don't know personally, they just sort of follow you. They do see you as like, I feel this way, especially on TikToks. I don't know if it's because it's all videos or what, but people look at you as like this, as you said, sort of expert, and you like everything in your life is like great because you're this. I don't know. I think when they see like kind of maybe how we visionize like sports stars or actors and actresses, you know, like sort of put them on a pedestal, and you're like, and I'm not saying that's how people look at me, but there is that sort of feeling, I think, that they look at you and they're like, wow, everything is going great in their lives. That's wow, look at how great. And you know, for me, like on Christmas, my husband wrote me a note he wanted to divorce me on Christmas, like this past Christmas. And I'm like, had that happened, you know, 3 years ago, I would have been curled up on the floor, like in a fetal position. So now I'm taking that from what I learned from that 17 years of marriage, 20 years being together, of like taking that, what I'm learning, because we're still going through it. It's not it's horrible. And I feel like that's a whole nother group that I can help with people, because honestly, the reality is that people who have diseases, the 70% of them, their spouses leave them, which is probably nothing that you would know, because we're difficult, you know, it's not easy to be with someone who has a disease.
No. Yeah. And it's I had a dear friend say to me once that, to your point about you can help people there too, divorce is so hard because it's like a death, but the person's still alive.
100%. That's the perfect way to describe it.
And so, yeah. And if you know, and this is one of the things that I've found too, Cindy, that was really interesting. If you're an entrepreneur and your business goes under, your likelihood of getting divorced is 10x. Right. And so like there are people that take risks in business. And I've spoken with people that are like, a good friend of mine was he owned the number 6 business on Forbes' fastest 5,000 growing companies in the country. Oh my number God. 6. And they were blown. I mean, just absolutely everything that you would see, you'd be like, they're crushing it. Well, they had people not pay, like vendors not pay. They had $2.5 million in receivables. They had maxed out their credit cards. They'd put everything that they could. Here's this I mean, like, it's a very profitable business when they get paid on time, but they're not getting paid on time, so it doesn't matter. And they went under. Great business. I had another friend, he owned a $100 million business that they refurbished fire engines. Like, which you would think, what? But, you know, and somebody that worked for him stole a bunch of money, committed some crimes, like, and he's left holding the bag. Yep. You know, and it's like, these are good businesses that have good people, that have good ideas, and they didn't make it. And so, yeah, there's a whole group of people that you can absolutely help that are going to be like, oh my God, like Cindy's a real one.
Things happen. And I think that is when you say, you know, like, I think, first of all, it's so awesome to have these successful businesses. I mean, that is like, obviously that's everyone's dream. One of the things that I talk about so much in my speech, though, is when I was in the corporate world, we were doing extremely well, like taking private jets to Mexico for 2-week vacation with a chef, and, you know, like everything that you could, like living the high life, like literally traveling the world with our kids. Like my kids have been to more places than you can imagine. And then you get sick without your control and everything stops. Literally everything stopped because my job gone. My husband's in the military, so it's not like he was making any money. And so I was like he's not. And so I was like the breadwinner. And so literally when I lost my job, it was like our entire lives completely stopped. Everything changed dramatically, like where we had to start like savings. That's the first thing. And you're like, so that's when you realize, like, and it was hard teaching my kids this because they were living that sort of great life. And now things have slowed down where we can't go on vacation all the time. Mommy can't go to Target and be like, oh yeah, get whatever you want anymore, which is what we were doing. But now I say this, like that, none of that even matters. I would give everything I had away back then to just be healthy. Like, because this is how quickly your life can change. Like I ran a half marathon. I was a full marathoner, like I ran Boston. I qualified and ran Boston. Wow. And so I ran a half marathon the week before I was diagnosed. Healthy, didn't smoke, didn't really drink, eating vegetarian, doing all the things. And to be kicked in the face with this potentially fatal, extremely rare disease that has literally turned my life upside down, and then you lose your job and everything else happens, that's when you realize like money is great to have, but it's not what's important. Like it's not, because, you know, I probably will never maybe I will get back to where we were, but at the end of the day, that's not even what is important to me anymore.
Right. That's not the goal
at all. It's not. And at the end, back then it was very much like, oh yeah, we'll spend this much to go on a vacation with our friends to keep, you know, sort of keep up with those people. Yeah. And that's an issue that Americans have, by the way. It's a issue. Huge.
Well, and it's that whole thing, right? Like what success is for you now has fundamentally changed to what it was 5 years ago.
Very humbling. I will tell you, it's very humbling when that happens. Your friends are still like able to, you know, do these things. And you're like, I can't go and spend $500 on a dinner anymore, which now you look at it and you're like, how stupid, like $500 on a dinner, like that's ridiculous, you know, but back then it didn't matter.
Yeah. As I like to say, it's a fierce lesson to learn, and it's not one that you wish on anyone, but you wish the grace of the lesson for everyone.
Yes. And to your friends who lost their businesses, what a horrible thing to happen to them. So horrible. But unfortunately, the reality is that happens so much in America between losing businesses, divorces, illnesses, like things go wrong in your life. And that was a huge, hard lesson for me to learn. Like it was a very hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability.
My pleasure. I loved it.
Hanging out with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Dave.